In this video, we're going to look at trauma symptoms. Let me pick up. In the last video, we looked at the possible history of trauma. Now we're going to see when you have trauma, what are some of these symptoms? And we're going to go through this slowly. If you want, you can just scan and move on, but I prefer to go through this one at a time, possibly give examples and keep going. So, there are different categories of symptoms. There are emotional symptoms, behavioral symptoms, cognitive symptoms, physical symptoms, and sensory symptoms. So, the emotional symptoms of trauma can be anger or aggression, just being really mad about what happened. And sometimes anger is actually masking as sadness and pain. A lot of times it can be. Anxiety, feeling very what's going on, what's going to happen in the future. A lot of times we say that anxiety is future focused. Chronic loneliness and isolation. Listened to a podcast by one author, and they called chronic loneliness in your bones. And unless you've experienced that, you can't really fully understand how lonely and painful loneliness can be. Being isolated chronically, if perhaps you're older and you've outlived a lot of your family members, or you're isolating because that's the place that you can be to protect yourself. Chronic shame. Shame is I am bad. I am a bad person. Everything I do is bad. And then always looping in your brain. So these are emotional symptoms. Depression is kind of typically what we think about as listening and focusing on what happened in our past. Difficulty being alone. These are symptoms. It's just really hard to be alone. You always want to be around people. Difficulty feeling close. I want to feel close to people. I have an attachment system, but for whatever reason, they keep on rejecting and abandoning me. And then that's activating, well, I guess I just can't feel close. Difficulty making and keeping friends. Same idea. I want to be close to people, but somehow I keep pushing them away even though I want to be close. And we will talk about that later, how our brain actually works in the attachment system. Difficulty with boundaries. You either make absolute boundaries of, no, you can't come over right now, nobody can come into my house, or you have boundaries that anybody can just walk in whenever, whatever. They can use anything in your house. You think you're being easygoing, but really you have not learned boundaries with your body, with your things, with your home. Fears. Fear is a symptom of history. Oh my gosh, this might happen again if I get into this situation. So always being on. Frequent conflict with others. Why am I always fighting? Why do I always have to be right? Sometimes it feels wrong to be right. Or how do I say that? Always having to be right makes you feel right. Even if you're wrong, you still have to be right. So then you're having a lot of conflict. Hopelessness. This is just never going to change. Inability to relax, like you're a cat on a hot tin roof. What's happening next? What's happening next? You're just hyper vigilant. Lack of motivation, the opposite of that. I just cannot get off the couch. What is wrong with me? I am a bad person. Back to shame because I can't motivate myself to go to work and do the things that everybody else does. Clean my house, take a shower, brush my teeth, sleep schedules, mood swings and irritability. You're just always up or you're always down. You're just irritated all the time. Night terrors. Uh, the difference between night terrors and mares, from my understanding, is night terrors. My daughter had that. I could not wake her up. Her eyes were wide open. She was in a nightmare state, and I couldn't wake her up. Nightmares are when you do wake up, or they're just terrifying. Well, both are very terrifying. One's asleep and one's like you're awake. Numb or detached. I have a client that she doesn't understand, why am I so numb? Why can't I feel? I'm detached from myself. I feel like I'm living outside of my body. Overwhelming emotions. I can't handle this. So I have just everything. I walk into a grocery store and I can feel everybody's emotions. I walk into church and I can feel everything and I just can't handle it. Painful indecision. Should I do this? I can't do that. I should do this. I shouldn't do that. But what about this? What about? Very difficult making decisions. Panic attacks, that is physiological. And if you haven't had one, it's really hard to understand how painful panic attacks are. I remember I was driving in San Francisco on the other side of the bridge, and I've always been fine with heights. And then all of a sudden, I mean, absolute sheer terror as we were coming down from being up really high on the other side of the Golden Gate Bridge. And I just had absolute panic. It was like dragging a dog across a dog who didn't want to go outside or come with you, like dragging me across the floor. It was just absolute sheer. And it was in my chest and head and neck. It was awful. Phobias. Arachnophobia, it's fear of spiders, fear of being alone, fear of germs, fear of going outside, self-hatred. You just don't like anything about you. Unresolved grief, emotional symptoms, and especially with people who have lots of grief, lots of loss. Loss can be anything from losing a very precious ring, having to leave your childhood blanket behind, not having your belongings with you, to your beloved caretaker died, and everything your dog died. Grief is not just unresolved regarding a caretaker or loved one who died. It's loss. So those are emotional symptoms. I want you to stop and pause this video and see what emotional symptoms you do have. So let's talk about behavioral symptoms of trauma, addictions, any kind of addiction, whether it's scrolling on your phone, boy, that's a big one. Pornography, um, shopping too much, anything that's too much and in excess. Obviously, drugs and alcohol. These are all, in my opinion, trying to numb and get out of the pain, and it's a good strategy for a while until it doesn't work anymore. Eating disorders. There's also, anorexia, undereating, bulimia, eating and um, purging, always eating and purging. There's also being disordered eating, which is about trying to control what you do eat, making sure you eat exactly the right thing in the morning, exactly the right thing in the afternoon. So that's disordered eating. Impulsiveness. Oh, I have to do this. Like you have got to go to the grocery store right now. You cannot do it at any other time. It must be done now. Behavioral symptoms. Inability to manifest long-term projects, goals, and dreams. You're always a dreamer, but you cannot manifest them. Having long-term projects. You think about it, you have all the nuances, and then you just don't execute. Inability to slow down, you're always going. Busyness is a badge of honor in our society, and being productive is a badge of honor. So, are you valuable if you slow down and take a Sabbath day? Are you okay if you just sit on the couch for a day? I know I have a really hard time with that one. Manic symptoms. You are just always on. Manic symptoms would be like you're not sleeping for several days, your mind is racing. Need for control, man. You better control. Remember, these are symptoms, these are outward. You're trying to control everybody. If they are not doing what you need them to do, then you are not regulated. So you go to try to control them. And that's a problem. Perfectionism. Well, surely if I'm perfect, then somebody will love me and then I won't have all these needs. So I'll just be more and more perfect. I'll have dinner ready at 5. I'll make sure that I have a schedule for the kids. I'll make sure that my hair is all perfect. I'll make sure that I run perfectly, that I have all this. If you're a teenager, you're in all the sports and all the clubs and you're a straight A student. Perfectionism, self-harm. Some people cannot feel the pain because they're so numb, so then they do cut. They'll pinch, they'll hit themselves. Um, Sexual difficulties or compulsions. They can't have an erection. You can't have an orgasm, or you have to be with somebody and must have the orgasm to help you regulate your um, emotions. Social isolation. Maybe you're like, you know what? I'm just not going to be around anybody because if I'm around people, I'm just in trouble or I make problems. So I'm going to isolate. Suicidal ideation. I cannot take this anymore. This pain is just too much. I cannot be in this space anymore. And you just want out. Underemployment. You just have a hard time getting a job. You cannot do it. Uh, you get the job and then you can't stay there for many reasons. And at this time, I want you to review this behavioral symptoms checklist, and then we'll go on to the cognitive symptoms. So, cognitive symptoms, chronic self-criticism. I'm not good enough. It's your inner critic. What's wrong with you? I should have done it better. I should have known better. Chronically criticizing yourself. Difficulty concentrating. You're in class and you just cannot read the sentence. You read the paragraph 10 times and you cannot absorb the content. Or you're at work and your mind is just elsewhere. You can't do the numbers or make the phone calls. Frequent confusion. Was I supposed to be here? Was I supposed to be there? Wait, I don't know what I was supposed to do. What do I do next? Memory issues, problems. I think that happened. Did that happen? Did I do that? What happened? Oh my gosh, I don't remember. Negative, anxious rumination. Did I do it right? Oh my gosh, did I say it right? I'm such a bad person. I should have done this better, or you're just triple thinking what you should have done. Negative beliefs about yourself. I'm a bad person. I can't do this. I can't handle this. Um, I'm dumb. I'm, you name it. Or negative about others, being judgmental. Why aren't they doing what I want them to do? They shouldn't be doing that. That's not ethical. That's not moral. That's not right. Racing thoughts. Your mind, you cannot calm it down. If you have ADHD, sometimes this is part of that symptom. I also know that from trauma, racing thoughts, your brain is trying to figure things out, so it races. Remember, these are cognitive symptoms. What's going on in the inside of your brain? Severe indecisiveness. You just cannot make a decision. Too much going on, too many variables. I want you to stop and pause for a moment and see what cognitive symptoms you may have. Let's keep going on to physical symptoms. Physical symptoms, autoimmune diseases. You wonder why you have Hashimoto's thyroiditis and you don't have a voice. Perhaps you were shut down and isolated and you could never talk. You were lectured, or you just never did anything right. So you just put it all on the inside of you and you have autoimmune responses that like geographic tongue or perhaps uh what do they call that? IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. Like none of these are fully diagnosable in the healthcare system. Chronic back pain. You just have these are physical symptoms that there are no explanations for that can't be fixed through medication or surgery or physical therapy. Chronic exhaustion. You are just exhausted all the time. You are on the couch and you cannot get up. I have a client that explained chronic fatigue as it felt like he had the flu for 14 hours a day and he just could not sleep enough. And it is possible that you do have chronic fatigue because your body has a buffer in it. And when life comes at you and wears that buffer out, it comes straight to your soul and you can't handle it anymore. Chronic headaches, very common with trauma. Insomnia, you can't sleep. Oh my goodness. Just laying in bed, mind racing. Irritable bowel syndrome, I already talked about. Lack of appetite. You can't eat. It's just everything just feels nauseous and just you have no appetite. Unexplained physical symptoms. Let's take a pause here and I want you to review your own physical symptoms and symptoms checklist. Okay, let's finish this up with sensory symptoms. Remember, this is all part of trauma. These are symptoms of trauma. Sensory symptoms, hallucinations. Do you see things that maybe aren't there? Do you hear things? Are they sensory? You can feel things. You can smell things that aren't there. That's trauma. Um, I had that to me, the hallucinations goes into internal family systems, which I won't discuss now, but I have worked with clients who have had all these, and once we started reducing the traumas in their body, the hallucinations went away. Most of these symptoms go away as you begin to process the trauma. Inability to account for days, hours, years, just lost time. You're just blacked out. I had a client who years ago, she'd show up at her we'd talk and she would tell me one thing and then she would tell me, yeah, I would sit down at a sewing machine and then I don't know where the time went, but I would come back to myself and I'd have a beautiful garment made. Another part of her was hungry, so her daughter would make her food and the daughter would be like, but and then the client would say, I'm still hungry. And the daughter would say, but just made you food. Well, these are highly developed parts, protective parts, which isn't absolutely critical, typical, but that's an extreme example of losing time or space. It's kind of like when you drive down the freeway and you're just like in your own world, everybody dissociates and you miss your exit. Happens to me all the time. Not all the time, not as much as it used to, but anyways, parts of your body feel unreal or separate. You don't feel part of the real world around you. Or you can feel separate from your body, like your head is separated from your body. You don't feel connected. That's trauma. And the world feels, like I just said, unreal or separated or separate. So with your body can feel unreal or separate. And then the world can feel like you're walking through a house of mirrors and you feel or you feel separated from the world. So this is a look at the symptoms of trauma. I want you to take a few minutes and reflect on this, and we will continue with our next session. Okay, so that ended up being 20 minutes long, but I did make a pause between each symptom checklist. There was emotional. After emotional, I said, I want you to reflect and take a moment. Then I paused. Then I came back to the next section. I said, let's go over behavioral symptoms, gave explanations for all of them, asked them to reflect, paused, and then came back to cognitive. Then we did physical, and I ended with sensory symptoms. So that was 5 different sections, and it took 20 minutes. The next section is window of tolerance, which explains how the symptoms work. So I think it is a little bit lighter. It's only 2 written pages and 1 picture.